Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother and sister, welcome back to Islamic Notes channel. She is beautiful, famous, and adored by thousands of people on social media. She has everything: luxurious fashion, a charming face, and a lifestyle that many women dream of. But behind the smile on the camera, her heart is crying. Until one day, she read a story about a noble woman named Siti Khadijah. Since then, her life has never been the same again. This is not a fairy tale. This is the true story of a woman from China who found the light of Islam, not from a long sermon, but from one name: Khadijah binti Khuwailid. A woman who lived 1,400 years ago, but her heart still shakes the souls of truth seekers to this day. This is the story of a beautiful Chinese woman who cried after reading the history of Siti Khadijah. My name is not important. What people know is that I am beautiful. In a big city like Beijing, beauty is currency, and I have it. Since I was a teenager, my face has been eyed by cosmetic brands. I became an influencer. Every post of mine is flooded with thousands of comments. Your skin is perfect. I want a face like yours. I receive dozens of packages every week: skincare, fancy dresses, expensive perfumes. My face was plastered on advertisements, invited to exclusive parties, praised, flattered, fought over. But you know what they never saw? An empty heart. In front of the camera, I smiled widely. But after the live ended, I was pensive among the glow of the ring light. I asked myself quietly, why do I never feel enough? Please ... I tried to escape from loneliness through shopping. I bought shoes worth a month's salary of an ordinary person, but it was still empty. I took yoga classes, meditation, even read tarot, but it all felt fake. My friend said, "I'm crazy. You have a perfect life. Look at your followers. Look at your bank account." But how do you explain the emptiness that the eye can't see? One night I cried alone in front of the mirror. I saw a beautiful woman, perfect makeup, bright red lips, but her eyes were empty, so empty. Then I realized all this time I lived just to be seen, but never really saw who I was. That day I made a promise. I must find something real, something that can fill my heart. I didn't know what it was, but I wanted to find it. And without me knowing, the search would lead me to Siti Khadijah. Night after night passed. I started reading more about happiness, psychology books, philosophy, spirituality. I tried them all, but every answer felt abstract. I joined a self-healing community, meditated by the lake, recited mantras while lighting incense. But all of them only made me relax temporarily. The next day, I was empty again. I started writing questions in a small notebook. Why am I not happy even though I have everything? Why do I feel lonely even though I'm surrounded by so many people? What is the meaning of life if all this is just to die? The more I searched, the more I realized there was something inside me that was screaming, but its voice was muffled by the glitter of the world. Until one afternoon, I decided to go to an unusual place, the city public library, not a place that influencers like me often visit. But that day, I just wanted to be calm. I walked past the shelves, and for some reason, my eyes fell on a small book in the corner. The cover was simple, in English. The title was "The Women Around the Prophet." I didn't know who the prophet was, but the small title underneath made me stop. Khadijah, the woman who believed. I had never heard of that name before, but for some reason my fingers immediately reached for the book. I sat down, opened the first page, and began to read. And there the journey I had been searching for began, not from an expensive seminar, not from a spiritual teacher, but from a great woman who lived more than 1,400 years ago. I sat on a cold wooden bench among the silent bookshelves. In my hands, an old plain-covered book, but its contents seemed to penetrate my soul. Page after page, I read about a woman who was so different from all the women I had ever known. Her name, Khadijah bint Khuwailid. She's not just beautiful. He's not just rich. He's not just visible, but he has faith. She was the first woman to believe in Muhammad. That sentence made me stop for a moment. Who is this woman? Why did he believe so much in a prophet even before the whole world believed in him? I read how Khadijah ran a big business in an era when women didn't have a voice. I read how she chose to marry Muhammad, an honest man but not rich. And I read how Khadijah comforted her husband, who came home scared after receiving the first revelation. God will not waste you, he said. I closed the book for a moment and my chest felt tight. Something flowed, something I had never felt before. My tears fell slowly, not because I was sad, but because I was touched. This woman was not just strong. She was full of love, but independent of the world. She was noble but modest. She was respected but not seeking praise. And for the first time in my life, I asked myself, what made this woman so noble? Who was the God she believed in? And who was the prophet she loved so much? I didn't realize how much time had passed, but my heart felt more alive than ever. From that moment on, I couldn't stop. I had to know more. I had to know who Khadijah was, who Muhammad was, and who the God they worshipped was. The more I read about Khadijah, the smaller I felt. The whole image of myself that I had been proud of felt empty, fragile, and false. I had always thought that a woman's strength was in her appearance. The more beautiful, the more powerful, the more praise, the higher her self-esteem. But Khadijah didn't need the spotlight. She did not dress up for the world. She stood behind a prophet, supporting without cameras, without applause. I read the story of when Prophet Muhammad returned from the cave of Hira, shivering. He was scared. He did not know what had just happened. And Khadijah hugged him and said, "Know by Allah, Allah will not humiliate you. You maintain ties of kinship, are honest in your speech, support others, respect guests, and help those who are in trouble." That sentence stabbed me. All this time I had been looking for a handsome and rich man. Meanwhile, Khadijah accompanied a prophet who was not yet known to the world, with sincere love and strong faith. I closed the book and looked at my reflection in the library window. My face was beautiful, but my heart was empty. Khadijah may not have worn makeup like me, but her soul was radiant. She was strong without having to raise her voice. She was respected without having to show off her body. She was loved without having to sell her pride. That was when I cried, tears that I could not hold back. Crying because I realized that all this time I was too busy beautifying my skin, but letting my heart die slowly. That day my ego was destroyed, but from the ruins I found something more valuable. A longing for meaning, for truth, and one name kept ringing in my heart: Khadijah. I didn't know where to start, but I knew one thing. I wanted to be like her. Since that day, I no longer opened social media as usual. I reopened pages about Khadijah more often, not only because she was the first woman to believe, but because she is a symbol of steadfastness. When the world rejected her, she believed. When her husband was mocked, she stood at the forefront to defend her. She lost her wealth, status, and comfort, but never lost her love for Allah and His messenger. I started asking myself, if Khadijah could be that great, where did her strength come from? The answer appeared repeatedly in every paragraph: her faith. That was the source of strength that I never had. I have skincare, I had popularity, but I had no faith. My days changed. I began to find out more. Who was the God she worshipped? Who was the messenger she loved? What religion made a woman like Khadijah so dignified, so great? I began to watch videos about Islam in secret. I read the translation of the Quran in Mandarin, and my heart trembled when I read one verse. And the believers, men and women, some of them are helpers for others. QS At-Tawbah 71. I cried again, but this time not because I was sad, but because I felt I was being picked up by something beautiful, something I had been looking for. Light, guidance, answers. I wanted to be a woman like Khadijah, not only beautiful on the outside, but calm on the inside. Not only adored by people, but loved by God. And for the first time in my life, I dared to say to myself, I want to know Islam. The days were drowned in readings and videos about Islam. I felt a calling that I couldn't refuse. I decided to visit a mosque in my city, a place I had never thought of visiting before. The mosque was small and simple, but when I stepped inside, a sense of calm immediately enveloped me. A young female teacher who spoke fluent Mandarin greeted me with a warm smile and no judgment. I began to ask everything that was on my mind. Who is Allah really? What is the meaning of prayer? Why do women wear the hijab? The teacher answered patiently, giving an explanation that made me even more captivated. There was no coercion, just warmth and honesty. That night, I brought home a Mandarin translation of the Quran. I read verse by verse, especially the stories of the prophets and pious women like Khadijah. My heart began to open. I felt that I was no longer an empty woman. There was a new light shining on my soul. At a small gathering of the Muslim community at the mosque, I said a sentence that I had never imagined before. Ashhadu alla ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. My tears flowed freely, not because of fear, but because of happiness. Happiness to find a true home in faith. I know this journey is just the beginning, but I feel like I have found the true meaning of my life. And it all started with the story of an extraordinary woman, Siti Khadijah. After I said the Shahada, my life changed drastically. On social media, many followers and friends began to distance themselves. Some even criticized and mocked me for choosing Islam. I lost some endorsements that had been my source of income. Some said, "You're crazy. You've abandoned your true identity." But strangely, my heart was calm. A peace that I had never felt before flowed with every breath I took. I started wearing the hijab, even though it attracted attention. I learned to endure insults and ridicule patiently. In the Muslim community, I found a new family. They strengthened me, taught me how to maintain my faith amidst challenges. I realized this was a test, but a test that brought me closer to Allah. One night I sat on the balcony of my apartment, looking at the sky full of stars. I smiled and prayed, "Oh Allah, thank you for choosing me to be your servant. Thank you for presenting Khadijah as my inspiration. I don't know what will happen tomorrow, but I am sure as long as I hold on to this faith, I will not lose anything, because truly I have found everything in Allah. Today I stand no longer as the beautiful woman that many people used to know. I am a woman of peace and meaning. I have found a home in Islam, the home I have been searching for. I always remember Khadijah, the noble woman who guided my heart without ever meeting her in person. Her steadfastness, her patience, and her love for Allah and the Messenger became the light that guided my path. Now I am learning to live my life with a higher purpose, not to be seen by the world, but to serve the Creator. The hijab I wear is not just a cloth, it is a symbol of my new journey. I still have beauty, but now it radiates from within, from faith, from sincerity, and from irreplaceable peace. And I want to say to anyone who hears my story, true beauty is not just about what is seen. True beauty is the light that comes from a heart that surrenders to Allah. Time went by. My days were not always easy. There were days when I felt strong and full of enthusiasm. But there were also lonely nights when doubts came knocking. Sometimes I missed the ease of my old life. I was once at the peak of popularity, admired by thousands of people. Now I felt like I was starting from scratch. I had to learn again. Learning to say the names in prayer, learning to perform ablution, learning to memorize prayers. It all felt foreign, but also comforting. Every time I felt tired or wavering, I returned to that book, the book that first introduced me to Khadijah. I repeated her story, rereading the sentences that had made me cry. And there I felt like I found new strength, because I knew that the path to truth is not always easy, but it is always worth it. I started writing a faith journal. I wrote down my feelings as a convert. I wrote down my questions, my hopes, and my gratitude. Among those writings, there was one sentence that often appeared. If Khadijah could stand firm in the darkness of the world, then so can I, albeit slowly, albeit alone. Now I feel more whole, more human. I have learned that being strong does not mean never falling, but knowing where to return when you do to Allah. One day I dared to share this story openly on social media. I had no idea what would happen, but I felt the time had come, not to inspire, but to be honest, to show that change is possible, that light can be found even in the most lost hearts. The response surprised me. Some mocked, some insulted, but there were also those who sent silent messages. I feel empty too, like you used to. Your story makes me cry. I want to know more about Islam. I realized that Allah never led me to change just for myself. Maybe I was also led to be a path for others. Like Khadijah, who never knew that her love would change the world, I too want to make my life a field of goodness, even if it is small, even if it is quiet. Now I no longer dream of a luxurious house or millions of followers. I dream of being able to perform prayers at the Grand Mosque, touching the Kaaba with hands that used to only hold cell phones for likes. I dream of being able to follow in the footsteps of noble women, not as a tourist, but as a servant who longs for her Lord. I know I am still learning, but I am not afraid anymore, because I no longer walk alone. In my heart, I always carry one name, the name that once changed the direction of my life, the name of a woman I never met, but who guided me with the light of her story, Khadijah. For anyone who feels empty, for anyone who thinks the world is the only way, I've been where you are. I've stood in the middle of the glittering, but felt dark. Today I want to tell you, there is light out there, and that light is called faith. If I can find it, so can you. Days pass, months pass. Before I know it, it's been almost a year since I became a Muslim woman. At first I thought that the change was enough by saying the 2 sentences of the Shahada and wearing a hijab. But it turns out Islam is not just a visible identity. Islam is a process, a long journey of arranging the heart, improving oneself, and surrendering everything to Allah. I began to feel that being a Muslim is not just about learning rituals, but about rearranging the entire way of looking at life. In the past, I judged myself from the mirror and the camera. Now I judge myself from my relationship with Allah. In the past, I sought validation from thousands of strangers on social media. Now I seek the pleasure of the one who sees all, even in my solitude and silence. But the journey wasn't always pretty. There were days when I felt small and alone again. There were nights when I cried for no reason. The world I once understood had changed, and I felt like a baby learning to stand. Sometimes I missed the empty laughter at parties, missing the faces that used to call me an icon, even though they never really knew me. But every time I miss the past, I remember. That past almost made me lose myself. That past almost made me forget that I was a soul, not just a body. I started memorizing the Quran, one verse at a time. Slowly, but surely. One night, I read Surah Al-Inshirah. Have we not enlarged your chest for you? And we have removed the burden from you? I cried sobbing, because it was as if the verse was addressed directly to me. Every letter felt like a hug from the sky. Every word felt like the answer to all my heart's anxieties all this time. I began to understand that God didn't just change my life. He saved me. Once, one winter afternoon in Beijing, I was sitting in a city park, wearing a long hijab and a warm coat. An old woman looked at me, then approached me and said in a surprised voice, "You're the girl in the perfume commercial, right? Why have you changed like this now?" I smiled and replied softly, "Because now I know that the most fragrant thing is not fancy perfume, but honesty of heart and peace of soul." She fell silent. Then she said, "Strange, but your eyes look more peaceful now." That's Islam, a religion that didn't arrest me, but introduced me to the real me. I started sharing my journey in simple writings and videos, not to become famous again, but to be useful. I know there are many women out there like me, looking happy but empty, looking perfect but lost. I want them to know that returning to God doesn't have to wait until we're completely destroyed. We can start today with one prayer, with one question: what have I been looking for all this time? And that answer, if sought earnestly, will take you to places you never imagined. I began writing a book, the first book of my life. It was called From Mirror to Light, a convert's journey from popularity to peace. The book was not about me. It was about what Islam taught me, that true love does not come from the praise of men, but from an honest and pure relationship between a servant and his Lord.